Let's see here. Okay, hello. Is this thing on? Let me make sure that we are live over here with our friends on Instagram. Okay, you guys, getting the show on the road. And welcome to today's live stream. Today we are talking about something that I think we probably don't talk enough about as a culture, but that is related to the very real challenge that I think we can all experience as adults at a certain place in life. The making new friends that are like really good, close, real feeling friends feels more challenging than it does in previous stages of life. And this is just a thing. And hang on, let me make sure that this is happening over here. Oh, good. Okay, I'm glad I did that again. I want to make sure that we include our friends on Instagram in this conversation. If you're just joining my little preamble there, is today we're talking about making friends as an adult and some of the challenges that we can face, with the intention being that we're going to be talking about your situation, your life experiences. And, my goal here is to hopefully send you away with some fresh perspective and some new advice. And so where this is coming from, on the most recent episode of Love, Happiness, and Success, I actually had the very best time talking to a very cool person, a journalist named Kelly Stout, about an article that she wrote recently for Esquire magazine that is hilarious. If you can just look it up online. I know it's free on Apple News. I believe it was called something like, I gave myself 1 month to make a new friend. How hard could it be? And she's incredibly funny, so it's worth reading just for that. But I think that in it, she described this really, poignant truth that we can, I think, all relate to, and combined with a very interesting fact that every 7 years, research shows that after a certain point in life, we tend to lose half of our personal relationships, our friends, which to me was just fascinating. But it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. People move away, people kind of move on to other stages of life. People start having kids, they get really involved with their jobs in a different way, and we just kind of lose people over time. And so the punchline here is that if we're not really intentional about focusing on developing new relationships and friendships as we evolve through these different life spaces, it's very easy to get to a point in life, particularly if you've evolved, if you've molted, right? And now you're a parent, or you have a different type of job, or you've moved to a new community, you're in a different stage of life, it can start to get kind of lonely. And this is also in alignment with, some reports coming from the Surgeon General's office lately that there's a loneliness epidemic, that more people than ever report feeling lonely, more so than they have in the past, which is so ironic, right? Because we are more connected than we have ever been in the history of the world in terms of our capability of keeping in touch with people. So today's live stream is really focusing on that, and I just wanted to make this space available for you and your questions and your pain points. So if you're in the space in life where you've where did everybody go? Or if it's been challenging for you to really find your people in this stage in life, I'd love to talk about it. And we've had a couple of fantastic questions come in already from people on Instagram and other spaces, some advanced questions, which is always so much fun. So I'll definitely be addressing those. But first of all, let's just do a quick little poll here, a quick vibe check. How many people on this stream right now are over the age of 25? Gonna raise my hand. Who else here with me is over 25? Because that's kind of when it starts to get different in terms of our friend groups and our experience with friends. Who is, like me, over the age of 25? Anyone? Anyone? No? Yeah? Okay. A couple of people. Fantastic. And then I guess my next question for you is who all can relate to this experience of, I think earlier stages in life, we have a lot of free time. We're hanging out in dorm rooms. We're like, let's go to a concert, or like just days where we're like, messing around. And it's like easier just to connect with people on an intimate level. So who all here with me right now has noticed a shift in, who is around you, right? That feels different than maybe it did when you were earlier in your 20s. Who's noticed that? Things have evolved. Maybe you've lost some people along the way. I have noticed that. I've had wonderful friends. And, even in like doing this podcast with Kelly and reflecting on this, and something that she said that I could really relate to. There wasn't a falling out. Nothing bad happened. We didn't decide that we didn't like each other anymore. It's just like drifting apart, that experience. Who can relate to that? Anyone besides me? Or not? Maybe for you, that has not been your experience, in which case I'd love to hear about that too. And maybe you could even share some of your perspective and wisdom with our community today. Because I also want to say too, I think, I think that there is some shame. And I think that the reason why we don't talk that much about struggles in this area, like if we do feel lonely, or if we're like, where did all my friends go? Or, I want to go out and do stuff and hang out, but I feel like, I don't have that many people to ask, or the people that I do know are persistently busy with like kids or family or home improvement projects or whatever it is. And I think that we tend to hide that because it feels like a vulnerable space to be in. So that's what I'm curious to know, what your experience has been like, because part of my hope for this live stream is, I know it's not group therapy, right? But just to have a little bit of that and normalize this experience, or also share, if you're having a different one. So somebody said, yeah, that you and your childhood best friends have definitely drifted apart, and that it doesn't feel the same anymore. Understandable. Okay. Well, good. All right. Well, and who here would like to have more people in their lives, more good, close friends that they can spend time with, do things with? Or I'd love to hear if you're like, no, I'm good. I am actually at max capacity with the number of people that I can sustain relationships with in my life right now. I'm curious to hear where you guys are with this. And I'll give you a second to answer. I'm pretty sure our Instagram is on a bit of a delay. Yeah. Okay. See some hands raised. Hello. Yeah. Ooh, this is a good point. Somebody commented, I have kids very young, so didn't have close friends after high school and found friends later through work, parents through kids' sports teams, and family. Sister-in-laws, close friends groups. That's wonderful. And it sounds like you have a lot of awareness that you were entering a phase of life that was different maybe than a lot of your peers. And it sounds like you were really intentional about finding different sources of friends, like knowing that that was something that you needed. Yeah. And another person shares, I have a lot of friends, but not as close as I would like them to be. And that is such a good point, and really the zillion-dollar question, because I think that there is that very real difference in being around people or spending time with people, but depending on the level of emotional intimacy that you have with that person, it doesn't really meet that deeper need to feel like that close connection that we associate with a friend, somebody that really gets us, maybe knows some secrets or has been with us through some things, and somebody that we can rely on, versus somebody that, we could make small talk with or maybe go do something with, but it's not really that that connected space. Can anybody else relate to that? I know that, I've had people in my life like that are fine, perfectly nice people, but that aren't really that heart-to-heart connection. Who else? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. And so if you're just joining us today we're talking about how to make and really deepen relationships with friends as an adult, because it gets more challenging. Another really interesting thing that came out of this podcast interview the other day was I interviewed journalist Kelly Stout, who did this fantastic experiment on making a new friend as an adult, and sort of how challenging it is, the equivalent of really like dating, but for a different kind of relationship. And what she talked about was some very interesting research coming from a thought leader on the subject. Her name is Dr. Marissa Franco, who, little spoiler alert, I actually was so interested in this subject, I went and I tracked down Dr. Marissa. I was like, let's talk to her too. So I recorded another podcast with her the other week. It isn't going to come out until a little bit later in the fall, but I was blown away by Dr. Marissa's perspective, and I can't wait to share this with you. So stay tuned for that. But one of the takeaways is that developing those kinds of emotionally intimate, deep feeling relationships with friends requires a lot of time. I mean, and unstructured time where we're just kind of doing whatever, like not making appointments and going and doing specific activities. It's like, think about times in your life when you did have maybe those connections. So high school, college, like laying around in dorm rooms, like, what is the meaning of life? Like those kinds of experiences, spending a ton of time together. And that as adults, when the demands on our time become so intense, with family and jobs and responsibilities and just all the stuff that we have to manage, we don't have as many opportunities to do that. And also, if we're not really intentionally putting ourselves in situations where we can connect with new people, our source of friends kind of becomes limited to work or any other, natural environments. But for a lot of people, we spend a lot of time at work, and, relationships with coworkers can be really different because you may not have common interests in the same way. It's just that you get thrown together. But also, you may or may not have that unstructured free time just to spend together. And also there might need to be some different boundaries in work relationships, depending on what the relationship between your role is at work. And so it's really important for all of us to expand and be thinking intentionally about, how do I connect? So anyway, if you have some questions about this, if feeling lonely and wanting to have stronger connections has been a pain point in your life, feel free to jump into this conversation, and we are going to answer your questions. So I want to move into this and just send you a link. If you have a question on this topic, you are welcome to jump into the comments and share it with me and the rest of our crew here live on this call. And if you would rather do this confidentially and just send a message straight to me that nobody else will see, you can do so using this link. It's growingself.com/dear-Lisa. I'll get it right here in real time, and we will talk about your questions. So I just wanted to put that in front of you. But first of all, let's just jump right in with some of these very cool questions that have come in advance. I always like to throw this link out there in advance so people can ask. And so this one comes from Instagram community member, and her question was, let's see if I can pull this up for you guys really quick. I don't know if I can show you the comment, but this one is actually like related to somebody's partner. So the question is, dear Lisa, how do I motivate my partner to make new friends? They often complain that they don't have any friends, and are also not doing anything to change that. And so reading between the lines, it sounds like she's understandably maybe feeling a little bit frustrated about this. And so, just real direct. Is anybody else in this situation, like with a partner who could benefit from having some new relationships, but is maybe feeling a little bit stuck? Like maybe you have friends, you're doing well, but you view them as being kind of lonely. Anybody else here in that space? Give our friends on Instagram a second to respond because of the delay. Okay. All right. At least one. I hear you. Okay. So thoughts about this. What I would be really curious to know is if you have any insight into what's going on with that. Because and again, this is somebody who's been married for a long time myself. Like, we see other people complaining and then not doing things and be like, come on, just do something. But to get really curious about why that makes sense, and even broaching a conversation like, you tell me that you feel kind of lonely and that you wish you had more people to hang out with, or, all your friends moved to Austin and had babies and you don't have anybody to go, do something that you like to do with anymore. But I also see you not really doing anything to change that. And I'm so curious as to why. Not any kind of criticism. I'm wondering, it seems like there's a gap between what you want and what you're doing. Help me understand. Because I think that can create a safe space for your partner to even reflect on that. I think, and I say this, as a therapist, obviously, it's only when we are challenged sometimes to reflect on our truth that we even consider it for ourselves. And that's one of the experiential values of therapy or coaching, is to have a process partner asking you some of these questions and waiting to hear an answer, and being in a space where you need to articulate that. And it could be due to a lot of things. They could be structural things like, I feel like I don't have any time, which could be absolutely valid. It could be, I feel kind of introverted. I feel like I wouldn't even know where to begin. I think especially for men, and this, I'm genderifying things here, and I want to do so with some caution, because, there can be very social, super gregarious, male identifying people, and then there can be very introverted, like no humans, female identifying people. And it is also largely true that women are acculturated, socialized to be more relational, talk to strangers, like, I don't know, be more cooperative. And that a lot of men kind of go through life feeling more isolated, and will frequently rely on their partners to be the social organizers. So their partner's friend group kind of becomes their friend group. Their partner's friends or their friends' husbands become their friends. And so that's how it works. And so that could be something else that comes up from this conversation, is a real legitimate, like, I don't even know where to start. Another thing that definitely happens with people, particularly as you get into your 30s or maybe even 40s and beyond, is that as we get consumed in adulthood by all these other roles, right? We become parents, we become partners, we become workers, and sometimes with very demanding jobs with a lot of responsibility, right? We become homeowners, that our lives start to get consumed by all of these things and these roles that we kind of have to do, whether or not we are totally in love with them. But these chew up, I don't know, 90, 95%, perhaps all of our time. And one of the things that I've observed many times as a therapist, and have, experienced some of this in my own life too, is that it's very easy to become disconnected, I think, from who you are and what you enjoy on like a personal level? What is fun for you? What is meaningful for you? What do you like to do in your free time, especially if you feel like you have no free time? And when we get really like disconnected from this, we lose our like kind of the things that we have to connect with people around, unless it is like we are both moms of first graders and that is what we have in common, and that is like the entire basis for our relationship, which, you know, is fine. But is there like that intimacy there? There certainly can be, but I think that that is an important factor. And so, you know, going back to the person's question, like, how do I encourage my partner to get out there and start making some new relationships? Is, you know, having some conversations around, are they connected with who they are? Is there like space in their life to develop new relationships? And if not, how potentially could you guys work together as a couple in order to make that happen? And how could you as a partner potentially support some of that, especially if you have a partner who has social anxiety, or tends towards introversion? You know, it might actually be easier to be making friends as a couple. So couples friends that you start doing things with, or other families or whatnot. And then from there, perhaps they're getting to know, you know, some components of that friend group on a more one-to-one level. So also taking a look, I think, at your relative strengths in your partnership. If you are more social and outgoing and gregarious and extroverted, how could you use your strengths for their benefit, in order to help them achieve their goals of having more relationships? And so again, at first it might be you guys doing things together, but supporting them and being in situations where they can get to know other people could also be something to do. But anyway, it starts with curiosity. Yeah. Can anyone else relate, or what do you think of these ideas? Do you think that they would work in your situation, or do you think that it might not land well with your partner? I'd be curious to hear. Let's see here. Okay. Oh, well, somebody commented. I think this is really important. Here, let me show you guys this comment because it's a good one. Part 3 with people. I've always been fairly, I think we missed a word. Maybe introverted is the word, but that it's daunting to start from scratch, finding new friends, etc. And I just want to validate that. I mean, it really can be, particularly if you are on a mission to make a friend. The guests that I interviewed on this episode of Love, Happiness, and Success. Oh, you know what? Let me just put this in front of you guys really quick. I want to just give you the URL in case you missed this episode. Now, hopefully you are already subscribed to Love, Happiness, and Success, and you get the podcast obviously on Apple, on Spotify. It's right there at the top of the feed, but you could also come to this URL, growingself.com, how to make friends as an adult, to read the article, but also if you're a watcher, watch the video of me and Kelly's conversation or check out the podcast, because Kelly goes into exactly what that is, and talking about how, as somebody who is very well spoken, I mean, socially savvy, charming, just delightful, and who does have a lot of established friendships, she was talking a lot about how vulnerable it made her feel to be putting herself out there in a really intentional way for the purpose of making a personal friend, right? And how she actually had to fight through some of that. And also talking about how she was like, I was on an assignment for Esquire magazine, and I still felt kind of like rah about it. So I just wanted to acknowledge the validity of that, and that I think that probably feels more intense for some people than for others. If you are more on that introverted side of the spectrum, totally true, versus somebody who is more on that extroverted side of the spectrum. They might not feel the same way, but we all have these natural differences that really do need to be honored. So anyway, I appreciate your perspective there. Okay, but these are so many fantastic questions. I love this. So let's tackle another one. Um, okay. Oh, this is interesting. So all right, how about this? So, friends have been a struggle in marriage. We don't have friends as a couple, but separate circles. Lots of mistrust between spouses' friends as they condoned his affair. Oh, I want better friends for him. Yeah, I could totally understand that. Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, can we just all say out loud? Like, and I think we could say this as a collective, like everybody else on this live stream with us is like, I'm so sorry that you lived through that. That must have been awful. And also to know that your partner has people in their lives who it sounds like were actively colluding with them to your detriment in support of this affair that was deeply wounding to you. And to know that your partner is like maintaining these relationships would, I would imagine, and you may not feel this way, but if I were in your shoes, would almost feel like an extension of the betrayal. Like they're still in relationships with people who were part of that, even if it wasn't the affair partner. So I could absolutely understand how this would be extremely comfortable for you and how you do not want to have anything to do with these people. And I just want to acknowledge and affirm whatever boundaries you feel like you need to set, and just acknowledge the fact that it would probably be an ongoing point of pain and contention in your relationship. And I guess the follow-up question for you would be whether or not this has been addressed successfully. I'll assume that you guys are in some kind of therapeutic process to heal after an affair, because this is a lot of big stuff. Most couples cannot, move through the steps successfully on their own just because of how emotionally intense it is. It turns into fights, right? Obviously. But I sincerely hope that that would be part of the conversation, and that you two are getting support in what is our shared vision for what our relationship looks like and what our lives look like together when we're fully on the other side of this. And that perhaps your partner is supported in being able to understand with empathy how you might be experiencing his continuation of some of these relationships. So I don't know if that is a clear answer to your question as much as an acknowledgement, but also, maybe some guidance around where to go with this in your ongoing work of growth and healing. So I hope that is useful, at least. Okay, thank you for bringing that up. And if you are just joining us today, we're talking about a very real experience for many people, which is the struggle to make and nurture real close friendships as an adult, with the understanding that there is a lot of natural attrition in our personal relationships as we move further into adulthood. And so this is something that we all need to be aware of and have a lot of intentionality and visibility around, because we can run the risk of becoming lonely and isolated if we're not putting energy into these parts of our lives. I shared with our crew here that this was the discussion on the latest episode of Love, Happiness, and Success that I recorded with Kelly Stout about her big experiment to make one new friend. So if you have questions on the subject or want to join the conversation, I would love to hear about it. So here is another super cool question that just came in from that growingself.com dear-lisa link that I shared with you guys, in case anybody else would like to submit an anonymous question to me. You're totally welcome to do this. But okay, so dear Lisa, can you please talk about how to make friends when you're an introvert and not very chatty by nature, how to meet people when you're not really good at coming up with what to say to someone that you don't know very well yet. What a super question. And I just love how self-aware it sounds like you are. Like, you know yourself well, and you know what your strengths are, and also that some situations are harder for you than others, and that is half the battle. What I would imagine is that, well, one of two things. It, in my experience, can often be true that people who are fairly strong introverts will do better, honestly, in relationships with people who tend to be more extroverted. So somebody who is like, I don't know what to say, doesn't talk a lot, or doesn't start conversations, to be connecting with somebody who's like, hi, what's your name? I'm Lisa. What are you doing? Blah, 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 and is willing to kind of like step forward to meet you. That can honestly create some balance in the dynamic. Or even if you have somebody in your life who is sort of more social, to be going places with them. They know people, they'll be introducing you to people and kind of like paving the way for you to have opportunities to start to get to know other people better. The other thing that is true is that these conversational skills can absolutely be learned, and that it's really not that complicated, but it requires knowing what to do and also having opportunities to practice it. So, for example, I not too long ago had the opportunity to engage in this is a program. It's a research-based program called Peers. It's designed for older children, teenagers, and even young adults who are interested in developing social skills and really that science behind making and keeping friends. And the Peers program has broken it down into these really simple steps. The goal is to ask open-ended questions, find common interests. Do you have sources of friends? And so for you, I would think too, it would be very important to be putting yourself into situations where you are doing things that you enjoy that also provide you with opportunities to connect with other people who are also doing the things that you both enjoy, because it will be much, much easier to have conversations about like whatever it is that you're doing, right? And so that would be another question for you. Do you have clarity on who you are, what you like, what you're into? And the other piece of this is that has to not be something that's sitting in a little room by yourself. Like if I'm super into crocheting or something, like, okay, well, does that give you an opportunity to connect with new people? So to be thinking about how do we find sources of friends that are aligned with that, but also, as an adult, even, you could check out the Peers material. It's put out by UCLA. If you just Google Peers social skills training, you'll find it. They even have some really cute YouTube videos on like how to start conversations. It is honestly kind of entertaining. But even just reading books on the subject, the art of making small talk, or how to start talking to new people, and just read, learn, practice, but also expect that you're going to feel kind of anxious at first. That is part of the experience. And that the more you do it, the better you will get at it, but also the less anxious you will feel. Whenever we feel anxious and then allow that to stop us from engaging in whatever behavior is making us feel anxious, that anxiety gets bigger. And so it's so counterintuitive. But when you are aware that you are feeling anxious about something, what you need to do is, in a safe enough feeling way, but you need to walk into whatever that is, or otherwise your anxiety will become a force that will paralyze you and will prevent you from being able to create the life and the relationships that you want. We neutralize anxiety by having corrective emotional experiences. And so that is the work ahead. And if this feels too daunting, obviously, to read a self-help book and then go do that, this would be a fantastic opportunity to connect with a really competent therapist, or perhaps even a therapist who is also a certified coach who can help you figure out what it is that you want and then put together an action plan that helps you create that. But I would caution you to find a therapist who is a certified coach, because they will have a lot more insight and depth and be able to sort of maybe speak to some of the anxious components that you may be carrying with you into this. Okay, fantastic question, you guys. I love this conversation so much. Okay. Here's another fun question. Let's see. Okay. All right. Oh, you know what? I'm just noticing that this is perhaps a multi-part question. All right. Dr. Lisa, I'm in a strange space. My husband and I moved to a different country a few years ago, and he recently left me. Oh, no. I am so sorry about that. Oh. And I had to move away from my home and my friend group and start again. That's hard. Okay, so this is part one. Part two, I'm 58 and learning the language. So it has been pretty lonely and challenging for me. I recently joined a hiking group and found that doing something physical is a great way to connect. Fantastic strategy. I love that, particularly around like activity-based things like we were talking about with another person in our community right now, like finding, putting yourself in situations where there are common interests, you have something to talk about. And then, oh, I see. All right. So this is something that we touched on later. So continuing to connect with people. And I've always been, it's a daunting thought to find new friends because I'm shy. Sorry, there's a word limit. Okay, got it. And so I don't know if there's a specific question here, but I just want to acknowledge the fact that just what you're saying is that you're in a really genuinely difficult space. I mean, because you have a number of different things that are layered on top of each other. You talk about being shy. So first of all, it's a heavier lift for you to put yourself out there and make new connections. Additionally, you are in a country where you don't speak the language that well, and that is a real barrier. So one thing that I would just toss out there, and this is probably something that you've considered, but where you are living currently, are there expat groups from your country of origin, little meetups where people from wherever are getting together once a month at a bar or something like that, where you have opportunities to connect with people who are also in that same country, who are also, speaking your same language and understanding your culture, because that could be something easier. And the other thing is that the reason why people go to those kinds of meetup groups is because they are also feeling lonely and are also looking for opportunities to connect with new people and make new friends. So there's a lot of things working in your favor, including the fact that you have people who are emotionally available and wanting the same thing that you are. And so if, especially if you're lucky, if you show up at some of these, you might sit next to somebody who's one of those chatty people who's going to make it really easy for you to talk to them because they have strengths as a conversationalist. They are curious. They are interested in talking to you, right? That's why you're there. And so that will be easy for you, an easier, I would think, way of connecting. But it's a challenging situation. And so thank you for being part of this community today and for sharing your story with our group here so that we can support you. I appreciate it. Okay, so more questions. Oh my gosh, so many great questions. Oh, here is an interesting question. This one came from my anonymous Q&A thing. If you would like to ask a question anonymously, please do. growingself.com/dear-Lisa. Also, if you submit that, you don't even have to ask a question. You can also submit your information to get reminders and updates about upcoming live streams, and also get sent a video recap of a live stream. So if you enjoy these and tend to like to come but can't always make them, just go ahead and hop over to that link and submit your information. Here, let me show you the thing again, because you would get recaps of these emailed to you that you could watch at your leisure if it was a topic that you were interested in. Okay, so super cool question. Dear Lisa, I am 51 now, and I would be happy to go to meetup groups to make friends, but often the people there are more like 35 and seem to view me as this weird old guy, whereas I also feel like I don't have much in common with the 50 plus people in older groups. Any advice for breaking the ice with millennials? Sure. I mean, I think if you're in spaces where you are finding common interests with people, so it's not just like a meetup group to have drinks at a bar, but like, what are you interested in, and connecting with other people who are interested in the same things, that there's like a basis for that relationship. I think it'll be much more interesting all the way around. So be thinking about like what you're excited about. Is it photography? Is it motorcycles? Like, I don't know what it is, but going and finding people in those spaces would be one. But then the other thing too, I almost, I'm going to sound like such a marketing researcher right now, but this is going into psychological research, is that you are thinking of people your age as a very broad kind of monolithic demographic. So 50 plus people, that's a big group with a lot of different kinds of people in it. And I think I'm hearing you say that you experience yourself as being somewhat different than many people your age, that maybe you feel more energetically aligned with younger people. And I think it's important to consider that there are people that are more like you, that are closer to your age than you might think, but to be thinking about, who are those people? Where do they hang out? And how would I find them? And so, if your target range is like 45 to 55-year-olds who are also into falconry, like, I don't know what you're into, but like putting yourself in those situations, or, but it starts by thinking about yourself. So what makes you different from a lot of other people your age? Is it what you're into? Is it your energy? Is it your background, right? And then making it a point to be finding people with those kinds of similar interests, because when you do, I think you're going to make some fantastic friends who really get you. And I think that it will feel easy for you, and it will feel fun for you. And yes, you can also certainly connect with people who are significantly younger than you, but it's going to take, I think, more focus on the common interests piece, and it might be a heavier lift just because these people are going to be in a different stage of life than you are, on a number of different levels. Like maybe they are single and you're married, maybe they're starting to have babies and you're sending kids off to college. And so, those are important things to consider. And so I guess I'm saying, don't force it with younger people. And if you have narratives about who older people are that are creating internal obstacles for you from finding your community, that's something that I would want to explore more deeply. Yeah. And another great thing here, as we frequently talk about on these live streams and on the podcast, all the time, our biggest obstacles to creating what we want is not external. It isn't necessarily the things that we do. It is our internal obstacles. It is the stories that we are telling ourselves about who we are, or what is possible, or what's going to happen if I try X, Y, Z. And those are worth exploring and shining a light on. And even if you're listening to this and having moments of recognition, this could be a fantastic opportunity to dig in with some journaling. Like, yeah, what am I telling myself about all the reasons why it's too hard for me to connect with people and what these obstacles are? Or also take that to a good therapist or a very competent therapist who is a certified coach who can crack into some of these mindsets with you to see if there is opportunity for growth and movement on that level. Because no matter what we do, if we are obstructed by our internal narrative, it's going to be a heavy lift and it probably won't work. So don't forget that dimension of this growth work. It's really important. But thank you so much for your question. What a good one. Okay. So, here's another super good question from Instagram. I'd be so interested to hear who all can relate to this. The question is, how do you deal when friends don't see you as close as you do them? So what you're saying is you perceive yourself to have the people that are important to you, that you feel close to, that you consider to be very good friends, but you're concerned that they view you as being a more distant friend, a more casual friend, that you're not the first person that they turn to, right? Whereas maybe they are that person for you. And so how to deepen that. And this is interesting, and I'm really glad that you're bringing it up, because friendship is always a choice, right? And we can't make other people relate to us the way that we want them to, right? Like we can only control ourselves. But what I would be curious about is just, why is that? In my experience, it could be that they have had historical relationships with other people that they feel very close and connected to. And especially if you are a newer friend, it may be that they're sort of deep emotional intimacy positions have already been filled, and you are more of a second tier friend for them through no fault of your own. It is just part of the circumstance of this relational dynamic. There are a couple of things that you could do. I mean, I'm assuming that you're like inviting them to do things with you and engaging in appropriate vulnerability, but also testing is this mutual vulnerability? So like paying attention to whether or not are they being emotionally vulnerable and intimate with me in response to when I share something emotionally intimate? Like, is there a reciprocalness in this relationship, or is it just me trying to like drag them into the deep end of the pool and they might not be interested in doing this with me? I think that it requires empathy and also sensitivity and awareness, like reading the room. Does this person want to have the same kind of relationship with me that I do with them? And again, if that answer is no, do not necessarily take that personally. It may not mean anything about you at all, but if you continue like trying to force this and have that kind of relationship, you may run the risk of spoiling it altogether, that they may start feel like they need to start holding you more at arm's length. So that's something that I would caution you against. But I think it's also important to be able to ask yourself, okay, like, here is this vision that I have for my life. Here's what I want my social life to look like. When I think about the kinds of relationships that I want to have with other people, here's what it means to me to have like really good friends in my life. And if I don't yet have that life experience, what might I need to do in order to create that life experience for myself? And again, I'm putting on my certified coach hat here as opposed to a therapist hat, but like might be useful work for you to be thinking about. So what's the gap? And considering your options, because if you are trying to have relationships with people who are not really that emotionally available, you might not get the outcomes that you want. And so then to take a step back from that and, have it be a new question is, how do I connect with people who, I would vibe with or the same things, but who are also emotionally available and who also want to have the same kind of relationship with me that I do with them. And it's so funny, I think we use language like emotional availability when it comes to thinking about romantic partnerships, not so much friendships, but it's absolutely true that it's like the same thing. And I think we could all look at a potential romantic partner who's not emotionally available and be like, that might not be your person ideally, right? And so, how hard are you going to work on trying to make that person love you, right? That would be a topic for another day. So I hope that perspective helps you just understand what this is. Certainly, if there are opportunities to deepen a relationship, go ahead and try that and see if that is effective. It could be, engaging in emotionally intimate kinds of conversations, spending more time together, but also understanding, that consensual piece. Does this person want to have that kind of relationship with me? And if not, it's my job to start building relationships with other people that do. So anyway, fantastic question. And I'm so glad that you brought that up for the benefit of our community here. Okay, let's see. I think that we have time for maybe one more question. And so let's see. Let me see here. Okay, so here is a cool question. Oh, and I wonder if that's a follow-up from the same. My partner doesn't have a hard time meeting new people, but doesn't really follow up with new friends to become closer friends. Interesting. And also, too, they even went on trips together with a friend group, but he's not associating with them anymore. But I feel bad that he doesn't have friends. And also that we are in counseling. Okay, that's fantastic. Well, I think, again, curiosity as to why, but also, does your partner understand the mechanics of a friendship, that energy is required to be making additional plans and, understanding that, gosh, now I'm going to have to look up this statistic if anybody else has quick access to this, like at 50 hours, 100 hours of time with somebody before you're really like getting into that, yes, we are close friends kind of territory. Because I think, some people who don't understand the mechanics of how this work might have some magical thinking, like it just clicks or it doesn't. And so, if we go and hang out one time, that I and they also need to continue investing time and energy in this relationship in order for it to turn into a real, attachment bond and have that kind of closeness. And the other thing here too, going back to curiosity, is it possible that he didn't like those people that much, right? Because one thing that we all need to be cautious about with our partners, is imposing our thoughts, our ways of being, our values, right, on our partners. And it might be that your partner is not actually feeling it, and that even though he's spending time with these people, they don't feel like his people. So again, going back to that, like, what is the source of friends? What is the basis for this relationship? And that it's a numbers game. And it's also true. I mean, in my experience, like, and I think that this goes back to like personality and personal strengths, is that there are some people who have an easier time connecting with just about anybody. Like they can meet a random person and are almost like not that picky. And you might be one of those. It might be very easy for you to form bonds with people who are fairly different from you and have a lot of tolerance for those differences. Not everybody is like that. And so they're kind of looking for unicorns, or they want to feel a certain way. And it's like they're going on a bunch of dates with people, but that does not mean that they're like, sign me up to be that person's best friend. So maybe they're having weird experiences with them. Maybe there's just no chemistry. I mean, I think there needs to be chemistry for friendships. So again, be curious about your partner's experience, and be willing to hear and validate like what is going on and how does it make sense, without judgment, but, being able to help them perhaps be like, yeah, you know what? The people that I'm meeting are not really my people. What do I want to do differently with that? What would help me? Is it that I just need to put myself out there more? Is this a numbers game? Or do I need to start hanging out at more monster truck shows, whatever it is that gets them excited, right? So anyway, such a good conversation. I'm so glad that you guys are here. I absolutely love spending this time with you every week. And then just one last thing. If you haven't yet, I would strongly encourage you to check out this past week's podcast on how to make friends as an adult and read the article that it was based on. If you go here to my website, you'll easily connect to the link. It's Kelly Stout, Esquire Magazine. Absolutely hilarious. She shares a lot of great tips around her insights from this experience. And then if this is a topic that feels near and dear to your heart, stay tuned. I think it's going to be several weeks from now, but we're going to be releasing this very good interview that I did with Dr. Marissa Franco on the science of making and keeping friends. And she's like using attachment theory to help understand how friendships are formed and maintained. I learned a lot in talking with Dr. Marissa, and like on a scale of 1 to 10, I interview a lot of people. Okay, you guys. And I mean, she was like solid gold. 10 out of 10. So much helpful information, so much great perspective. I learned so much. I know you will too. So if you haven't yet, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Love, Happiness, and Success, and subscribe to the Love, Happiness, and Success podcast. And maybe you're already on my email list, and obviously we're connected on Instagram and the socials, but don't miss that episode. That one's definitely a keeper. Okay, thank you again so much, you guys. I'll be back in touch next week with another episode of Love, Happiness, and Success. Oh, and next week we're going to be talking about sexual intimacy in relationships and how to deepen this, because I know that it's been a big pain point for a lot of you. It's a question that commonly comes up in these live streams and elsewhere. And so I had the chance to interview a co-author with Dr. Ruth Westheimer on her last book before she passed away. And so that's going to be the topic of next week's live stream. So I hope to see you then. All right, you guys, take care.